All right, hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Geek Corner channel. Sorry, I've had to delay this stream so many times. I've been sick. like, I caught a cold like over a week ago, and I still have it. I'm still fighting this cold, and so it's going to be a short stream today. Hey, Chris, hope all is well with you. Thanks for popping by. Appreciate it. Like I said, fighting a cold, and so I keep bumping the stream and bumping the stream and bumping the stream. And so I figured, I think I'm at the tail end of the cold. And so I figured I'm just going to go on. If I could talk for 10 minutes, that's all it's going to be. But I wanted to dive back in one last video about Dragonlance Dragons of Fate. This will be a spoiler conversation. So if you haven't read the book, you don't want to know anything about it, just hit like, hit subscribe, and then come back later after you've read the book. All right. Because I've been spending more time in this. And whereas in my initial review of it out of the gate was, I liked it. Well, now that I've read it again and gone through it again and chatted with other people about it, it's not very good. It's it gets you on the nostalgia, and it gets you on, yay, it's we have new Dragonlance, but it's not a very good book. And so I'm going to talk about a few of the things that have kind of took this off of the, yeah, this is a pretty good book, to now knocking it down a couple of notches on that scale to going, yeah, this, it's a little bad. So hey, thanks a lot, Chris. I appreciate it. Hopefully the next day or two I'll finally be better. But this one's lingering for a long time. So let me start with what I talked about initially in my first review of the book, and I didn't want to go into the spoilers of it in the other video because that was my spoiler-free review. But this one with the spoilers now. First third of the book, really liked it. Action picked up. It just felt a little bit more like Dragonlance. You're introduced to new characters, but you're introduced to new characters while there was some tension, while there's some story. It wasn't just people sitting around chatting and talking. There was like there's stuff going on. There's like goblins to fight. There's a dragon nearby. There's people have been, killed by this dragon, and they're trying to figure out, our main heroes of Raceland and Sturm and Tasselhoff and Davina are trying to figure out on whether or not they've really changed history. And so it starts off really strong. Chris, the last third of the book was great to me, but I went into the trilogy hoping for an original gang to be back together. Not the case. Yeah, and I agree with you. I liked what was going on in the last third, but as I've reread it now, and this is what I'm going to share, why suddenly it lost a lot for me rereading, especially that last third. So first third, good action, introducing new, the characters like Huma, Magus, really like them. Thought that was good. Middle third, boring, just boring. Just kind of a lot of dialogue. There's threats of a war. Like we know we're in the Third Dragon War. Like this is like been hyped up throughout all Dragonlance, like the Third Dragon War and Huma, and how Huma saved, and stopped the Queen of Darkness from coming into Krynn, and it's this big epic battle with the good dragons versus the evil dragons, and this whole thing. And you're in this timeline of this great big epic war, but there's no war, right? There's only one red dragon. There's none of the metallic dragons are there. There's not a whole lot of evil dragons, no blue dragons, no black dragons. There's just one big red dragon. And there's an army, but it doesn't really sound all that big. And then you get the Knights of Solamnia, and there's like a dozen of them. Now, I've seen some other YouTube videos and some other channels that argued, well, it's because chaos has been brought back in time, and that's why everything's completely different, not just because the chaos really messed everything up. But that's just them speculating. That's not actually stated. anywhere in the book, or at least nothing that I remember from my reading of the book. Again, I'm spoiling this as I talk about it, but if the authors of Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman were really trying to get across the point that chaos changed, not because chaos was there, the timelines radically changed. You needed to imply, like, spell that out a little clearer and not just make the third Dragon War, instead of it being this big, huge, epic war, it was just this tiny little battle. Because now that's what it is. It just feels like it's this tiny, tiny little battle. Excuse me. And then this is where, for me, the book kind of gets off, is in this last third when they're trying to wrap this up. Like, did they change time? Can time still be saved? And again, big spoilers here, right? As I talk about this, but you have Magus is captured by the evil army. You have Tasselhoff, who's disappeared and went to go find the gnomes because he believes it was actually the gnomes that created the Dragonlance, and they did create some machine that they dubbed the Dragonlance, some kind of big ballista thing that shoots, big giant arrows type of thing. And Caramon and Raceland decide, well, who cares? We know Magus is supposed to die tonight, but he's our friend and we love him and we're going to save him, and who cares about history? Who cares? We're changing it. It doesn't matter. We want to save him. Way out of character, way out of line for me. And then you have Tasselhoff shows up in the middle of this enemy army. Like, it's supposed to be an army, right? And Tasselhoff shows up on this gnome machine and it blows up and it completely destroys the entire dragon army. But the whole army, it's gone. The whole army's gone. There's no more army after that. It's completely gone. And it's like, what's going on? Like, how did this happen? Like, it just seemed like it's just some stupid, quick way to just wipe out this whole army. Um, and again, it's so many things about, they were trying to kind of do some really cool things here, and mess around with time and mess around with the legend of Huma and mess around with the dragon, war, mess around with Raceland, that he's actually now okay of changing time because he's got to save his friend, which is, man, he wouldn't even save his brother. He'd kill his own brother at the test of the wizard test of high sorcery. So why would he save this guy who he's only known for a few days, and risk all of history and risk his own history? Excuse me, sorry about that. And then, to make matters worse, I just feel that this book broke a whole lot of its own lore when it comes to time travel and changing time. Now, yes, there's chaos, and yes, that throws a whole lot of stuff into the mix, but the book ends with Caramon and Sturm kind of going back into the timeline of the War of the Lance at the beginning of the War of the Lance, but history is completely changed because Techesis wins the Third Dragon War because Huma and the Silver Dragon are killed. So instead of them defeating the Dark Queen, they're killed. Techesis rules. So she now has been ruling Krynn for 1,500 years. Now, that's a massive shift in the timeline. And so to end up back at the end of the last home with Gold Moon and Riverwind still there with the crystal staff, it's like the crystal staff of Mishakal, which brings back the knowledge of the gods. Well, there's no reason to bring back the knowledge of the gods because the gods have never left. The gods have been part of Krynn for 1,500 years. Why Techesis at some point didn't find this staff in 1,500 years? Raceland's there, but now he's in a black robe instead of a red robe. They're trying to tweak the War of the Lance, but the timeline, like, man, if you change something from 1,500 years ago, it's not just going to look a little different 1,500 years later. It's going to look radically different. And it's something I did not understand. And this is probably my biggest gripe with the book. And I get it. I'm nitpicking. I get it. It's what I do. I like to nitpick. Um, they kept saying that when Caramon and Sturm would return back to their timeline, that they wouldn't remember going back in time. And they kept trying to go over that and repeat that again and again and again. And I was like, that's never been how time travel has worked. When Caramon went back in time, and then in the Legends series, and did everything, did fought in the in the Gladiator Ring, and then was part of the Great Dwarfen Wars, um, and then when he went back to his timeline, or when jumped to an alternate future, he remembered everything from the past. And then when he went back to the moment that he left, so it was as if he never left, but he came back a changed man. Like he was only gone for a little while, wasn't gone for years and years and years. He was gone for a couple of months. He remembered everything. He didn't lose anything from that memory. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I'm still fighting this cold. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Teresa. Really, really appreciate it. Great. Thank you for stopping by and appreciate the super sticker. That's very kind of you. Thank you. And so yeah, so why this whole idea that when they go back to their timeline, they're not going to remember what they did. That just didn't feel right. It didn't fit with the regular lore of time travel that they've established in the Legend series. So I thought that was weird. So the more I've been wrestling through these things, like these big things, like again, blowing up the entire dragon army, that it was just a little skimmish battle. It wasn't this big, huge, epic dragon war. Like where are all the evil dragons? Where are all the good dragons? Where it just felt rushed. It felt contrite. Like it felt like this is what it feels like, that they're trying to do an alternative story for the War of the Lance, because that's how this has ended. Again, spoilers. It's how it's ended. It's now the third book is going to be: are they going to be able to get it back to um, the regular timeline, or are they rebooting this and it's going to be a new War of the Lance? It's going to be completely different. Takhisis was never defeated in the Third Dragon War. She's going to be defeated now 1,500 years later. I think that's what they're going to do. I've been convinced since day one that they're rebooting this thing. So you could have just, the first two books, Dragons of Deceit and Dragons of Fate, you could have done in one story. You could have done in one book, and then you could have done the third book. Make that I don't know. It's just not sitting well with me. Reading it a second time. So I get it. I'm probably nitpicking, and I'm probably, because I've been sick and I've been drinking way too much neocitrin to kind of deal with my sore throat and my congestion. So maybe I'm a little groggy and over medicated, but it's not that good. It's it doesn't feel right. It feels different things are kind of thrown together for the sake of throwing it together. Excuse me. But even in that, there's still some of the things that the characters that I really, really like here, like Chris, like your point right here. What did I think of Magus? He was the highlight of the book. I agree, 100%. He's the highlight of the book for me. Raceland felt out of character, which is weird since the book's not written by the creators of Raceland. Sturm felt out of character for me. He felt too stuffy. Like we have always known Sturm was stuffy, but this is like extra level stuffy. Huma, Huma was boring. Like I don't know why Huma got so radically changed from the Legend of Huma book. Like, where's Kaz the Minotaur? Like, why is there no Kaz the Minotaur anywhere in this? Like, are they just completely scrapping all of that? That felt weird. But Magus, I liked him a lot. He was probably, not probably, he was my favorite character of the book. Totally, totally agree with you. And again, Chris, bang on right here. Biggest drawback with the tone of 90% of the book, there just wasn't a dire enough situation with the knights in the tower. Exactly. There's a dozen knights and one dragon, and they know they're toast. They know they can't beat this dragon. They don't have dragon lances. They don't have a dragon orb. They don't have the trap that was built, to capture the dragons and kill them in the High Claris Tower. Like all of these things, there's no tension, and they didn't even do, for me, a decent enough job of creating the tension of changing time, because you knew they were changing it. Like, I mean, we've always known since the 1980s, when Dragonlance Legends came out, that the only way to change time was you needed the chaos races to go back in time to change time. You needed a dwarf, you needed a kender, you needed a gnome. Humans, elves, ogres, they couldn't change time. And that's why it was forbidden to send those other races back in time, because they can mess stuff up. And time travel was really difficult. Time travel was rare, incredibly, incredibly rare. And that was the other thing about this book. I'm nitpicking like crazy now. How easily they fixed the device of time journeying. It's like, this is an ultra rare magical device that someone can't just do it because their great 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 grandfather made it. It's like that's not how skill sets work. Like, just because my grandfather was an airplane mechanic in the Second World War doesn't mean you let me fix an airplane. Okay, it's too complicated for that. And I get it, it's magic and it's fantasy, but it just felt way too easy to fix that device just to keep the time traveling, jumping around and trying to bail people out. So it just, again, so many things just felt rushed and faked just to be able to bail out because they painted themselves into a corner or whatnot. So, excuse me, sorry about the coughing. I really sorry about that. So yeah, so that's just kind of where I'm at with this right now. Like, I love the fact that it's a new Dragonlance. I love the fact that it's Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. I love them as authors. I read all of their books, but it feels phoned in. It doesn't feel like their other work. And here's the thing, like, and I was actually going back. I went back to Chronicles to compare, because even though this is about the Third Dragon War, right? Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman never really wrote big, huge, epic war battle stuff in Dragonlance. So when I think of Dragonlance Chronicles, when the big, big fight, the big battle was happening between all the Dragon High Lords, and they were all fighting for power, right? You knew there was this massive battle going on, but it didn't focus on that. It focused on Tanis, Laurana, and Kitiara. It was very character driven, right? And so you were drawn into the story through the eyes and lens of those characters. And so you didn't need to know all the details of the big dragon, the big war that was going on for control of the dragon army. And so that's what I was expecting to see in this. Yes, it's the Third Dragon War, but you don't have to describe the big battle between all the dragons, hundreds of golden dragons and silver dragons and bronze dragons and red and black and blue and white dragons fighting and duking it all out. You kind of hint at it as happening, but then focus on Sturm and Raistlin and Huma and Magus and Tasselhoff and Destina and bring it through that. But they didn't even do that very well. They didn't do the characters were kind of eh. They just didn't have that drive. It just didn't have, like you said, that tone, or that of the dire situation that they were in. Because I knew time was going to be changed. Like, you just knew. I mean, not only did they have Tasselhoff back in time, but they had the Grey Gem with them as well of chaos, and so of course it's going to get changed. So there was no risk. There was no like, oh my goodness, is this going to happen? Now, again, huge spoiler. I mean, I said it already, but when Huma was killed, that did surprise me. That was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they killed Huma. That did shock me. Um, but um, but that was it. But then it was just kind of done, right? And over, and then poof, they're gone. And cliffhanger ending. Again, we're back at the end of the last home, and time is completely, completely different. So I, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I need to go back, and maybe I need to, before the third book comes out, I need to read the first one, Dragons of Deceit, and then read Dragons of Fate again, or listen to the audio book, or just now that I made 3 videos about this book, maybe just kind of put it over here back into my Dragonlance collection, and then just move on and read something else. So if you have a book that I should be reading now because you're reading something that you're really loving, put it in the chat. Let me know what I should be reading next. A friend of mine recently told me I should be reading The Wheels of Time because I have never read that book. So maybe I'll try that one next. Yeah, ending was great. I'd love for them to continue a darker timeline for a while. I think that's what they're gonna do. I really do, Chris. I think they're gonna. I don't think they're going to fix this. Like, how do you go back in time and stop the death of Huma? I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to go, this is the timeline, and now we're going to defeat the Queen of Darkness at, in this new way. So they're going to do something new. And whether it's just going to be done in one book or, uh, again, one of my fears from the get go was that they were going to retcon Dragonlance, and maybe they are going to retcon it with this darker timeline. But if they do, part of me that breaks my heart just a little bit, because then they're wiping out Legends, which are my three favorite books of all time. And Chris, thank you very much for the $1 super chat there. That is very, very kind of you. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So that's about all the voice I have. 20 minutes of talking. That's about all I can do in a stretch. And then I got to go kind of rest up my voice. Um, Okay, ever read the King Priest trilogy? Best non-Weiss Hickman. I have not read that, so I will Google that as soon as I finish this stream and check that out. I haven't even heard of that. The King Priest trilogy. It's not ringing a bell. I did pick up recently a book series that I read way back when I was in college, and I'm debating if I was going to read this one next or something else. But this is the Thomas Covenant series. It was 6 books by Stephen R. Donaldson. Thomas, yeah, the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. I picked those up at a secondhand bookstore for like $1 a book, which I loved. I was thinking of going to that, and then thinking of going back to some real old school classic is old Michael Moorcock books. The books of Coram and Elric and Melnibone. These are like classic stuff. I've read this stuff in high school. I read Dragonlance in high school too, so I'm old. So yeah, so I'm kind of looking for the next thing that I'm going to read, but that's kind of my spoiler chat. Again, I was first read, loved it. I was just so excited. New Dragonlance, it's great. Second read through, it's like, man, you start nitpicking it, and you go, oh, don't like this, don't like this. This wasn't very good. This makes no sense. This makes no sense. And then it's kind of like, maybe I shouldn't have read it a second time. Maybe I should have just left well enough alone. So just some of my spoiler thoughts. Again, thank you so much for the super chats. Really appreciate that. All the proceeds that I make from YouTube actually go to help support kids in Guatemala through Compassion Canada. We're currently supporting 2 young girls through our projects in Guatemala, and so that is what the proceeds from YouTube go to. They go directly to support those kids in Guatemala. We also do special projects as well. So I will definitely check those out. Yeah. Strongly recommend that. Chris Pearson was the author. King Priest Trilogy. Read it recently for the first time. I feel like grown up Dragonlance. Okay, cool. I'm definitely going to Google that as soon as I get off and see if it's available on my Kobo at the library. And then I do like to find the paper copies of books. So yeah, so that's it for the stream tonight. Really wanted to just jump in because I've been putting this off all week. It's like, okay, am I better now? Am I better now? Am I better now? And so I'm feeling a little better now, I promise. So until the next video, God bless you, everybody, and we'll talk to you again real soon. God bless.